and welcome to a very important conversation about our economy, and that's the Capex cycle. The second quarter lead indicators did show some softness. If you remember, core sector data, IIP data, PMI, all showed a bit of a slowdown compared to previous months. But how about investment? Well, data from the CMIE shows a fall in new projects to just 7.3 trillion rupees. That is for the first half, April to September. That's versus a high of 12 trillion rupees of new projects announced in the first half last year. But we must remember that this follows 2 years of very strong growth in Capex, 6.9% growth in gross fixed capital formation in FY23 and 8.9% in FY24. So are we only seeing a minor slowdown, a temporary one because of elections and heat? Has the private Capex taken the baton from the government, or is this still government-driven? I have two experts, undoubted experts on the Capex cycle, CMIE's Mahesh, Vyas and Nikhil Gupta, the economist from Motilal, Oswal. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time. Mahesh, your new projects, of course, it's a unique database which only CMIE is able to put together. It does show that even if you look back 10 years, there has been a systematic and a sustained pickup in new projects in the last 2-3 years, right?
Right, that's right. We are seeing a pickup from 22-23. And in the preceding years, there was a lot of sluggish growth in new investments. There is a perceptible improvement in that from 22-23.
You have given us the H1 numbers as well, the April-September numbers for 24-25. That, as I just read out, is only 7 trillion compared to 12 trillion year ago, same time. Should we worry, or do these things happen in investment announcements?
So, no, we shouldn't worry too much about it. We can be a little patient with that. That 7 trillion includes the first quarter, which was the quarter when the Lok Sabha elections were being held. Yes. And at that time, neither do private sector nor does the government make any new announcements. And usually the investment also slows down a bit. So I think we should wait. It also includes the next quarter, which has got the rains effect involved in it. So the construction process goes a little slower. So I think if you combine these two, it is quite okay to give us a little benefit of doubt to this number and wait for the December quarter to see a comeback.
Okay. Well, it does look at this juncture that we may not get to the 35 to 40 trillion that we saw in 22-23 and 23-24. But I'll come back to you on that. Nikhil, what's your sense? You look at gross fixed capital formation as a percentage of GDP or even YOY growth. That has been fairly good, isn't it, over the last 8 quarters, 2 years?
Right, Latha. Hi, thank you very much. Okay, so Latha, as you mentioned at the beginning, investments growth was very strong in FY22 and FY23 as we came out of COVID-19. We saw growth of an average of 20-25% in those 2 years, which eased to about 10% in FY24. Now we have first quarter data for FY25 when we know investment growth was close to 9%, and we believe it to remain closer to 9% in the second quarter as well. So from 20-25% in the 2 years following the pandemic, we have seen almost 6 quarters of 9.5 to 10% growth, and we don't expect it to increase significantly in the next 2 quarters as well. So FY24, FY25, we are seeing an average of 9.5 to 10% growth in GSCF or broadly fixed investments plus change in inventories. As percent of GDP, yes, we must understand that investment ratio as percent of GDP has increased to almost a decade high. It increased in FY22 and in FY23 as well. Now we are close to 33% of GDP in nominal terms, which is the highest in almost a decade. FY24 was also the similar level, and we expect it to remain at the same level in FY25 as well.
Okay. I thought you said that there was a slowdown in the first half. How does how does investment compare over the last 3 years to the first half?
Okay, first half number I would not remember for the last 3 years. But for FY25 first half, first quarter nominal growth was 9%. When I'm talking about investments, I'm including GFCF and change in inventories. So it's official data, 9% growth we saw in the first quarter, and we do not see a significant pickup in the second quarter as well. So that's why I'm saying this first half FY25, we expect a growth of somewhere around 9.5 to 10%. But if you want the numbers, I have the numbers with me. So in the first half of FY24, again, this total investment growth was 10.5%.
Okay.
In the first half of FY23, this number was 25%. And in the first half of FY22, since there was the base of first half of FY21, which was the pandemic period, the growth was 52%. So first half of FY21, which was pandemic, there was a massive decline. Then we had a massive growth in first half of 21. First half of 23, we had a growth of 25%. First half of 24, we had a growth of 10.5%. And first half of FY25, we expect it to be 9.5 to 10%.
Okay, so there is a bit of a slowdown according to you because the base became very high in the post-COVID year. But Mahesh, are you getting a sense that we are anywhere near what we were doing in 2004? You know, there are some comparisons because both banks and corporates cleaned up their balance sheets even last time. Up until 2003, you had all those Indian banks, UCO Bank, all of them getting cleaned up. Even a lot of steel company loans got restructured. Likewise, delevering by companies. Do you sense that a similar cycle is afoot?
Unfortunately, no, Latha, not as yet. We are not seeing the 2004 phenomena come back. A lot of the new investments that we are seeing in the recent past are driven by the government, are essentially an infrastructure. The action from the manufacturing sector, from the private sector, is still muted. Some of it is driven by the PLI, which is, again, I will call it as government-driven. But the mad animal spirits that we saw in the past, that is yet to come. So it is largely infrastructure-driven, largely government-driven, and the private sector is still hesitant.
What is your sense, Nikhil? I mean, yeah, you point out that overall, when you take gross fixed capital plus inventories, there is a slight peaking off from the 21-22. But has private Capex picked up the baton?
I don't think so, Latha. Especially, I mean, private Capex, there are two parts. There is household and there is corporate Capex. I tend to agree with what Mahesh said. The government, the central government Capex has picked up significantly, but we have mentioned it repeatedly that what the central government has spent, if you look at all the data up to FY23, a large part of that was actually a reallocation away from CPSCs. So before pandemic, what CPSCs used to spend after COVID-19, the central government has taken most of those investments on their own books, which gives a huge bump up to central government's Capex. But if you look at centers plus CPSCs, the combined Capex has not gone anywhere, at least till FY23. FY24, we do not have CPSCs data, but we do see some pickup, not again an extraordinary pickup, and that is the first year when we saw some pickup in government Capex as well.
Your data does point out, 1 minute, your data pointed out that government Capex is 5.2% of GDP, which is a high you have never seen before. It is an all-time high.
That is centers Capex. It does not include CPSCs. If you look at CPSC's Capex, it used to be around 2.2 to 2.3% of GDP as recent as FY18 or FY19. As of FY23, for which we have actual data, the investment by CPSCs was only 1.1%. And for FY24 revised estimates, it was only 1% of GDP. So whatever bump up you have seen in centers Capex, it is actually a reallocation away from CPSCs. And that's why I'm saying if you combine CPSCs is actually the part of corporate sector.
Okay, I have to wind up. But Mahesh, would you say the net effect of capital investment is good because your own data shows that projects stalled or shelved has gone down drastically?
That is true, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Nowadays, unlike 10 years ago, promoters do not say that their projects are stalled, number one. Number two, there isn't much private sector action over here. Most of it is government, and government doesn't say that our projects are stalled. So the drop in stalled projects is not an indicator, as it used to be in 2012 or 2013 and so on and so forth. So that's not much of an indicator. I would still hold my horses. I would still wait to say that there is an increase in Capex action. Yes, there has been a pickup, largely driven by infrastructure and government. But that's not enough to see a real investment cycle.
Yeah, I agree with you. We do hear a semiconductor here and a data center there and renewables, but it is not adding up to the kind of high we felt between 2004 and 2008. But I would hold my horses. I think maybe it is round the corner. We'll continue this conversation after the 2Q numbers are out and after the 2Q GDP is out. I guess both of you will have much more data to speak with us. Thank you very much, Mahesh and Nikhil, for enlightening us about the nuances of our Capex cycle. Wrap up on Bazaar. Chartbusters coming.